beautiful thing to witness, so thank you all for coming. My name is Courtney Terry. I work at the public library here in McMinnville, and we partner every month on the first Thursday at 6 p.m. with Dan and Nancy, owners of the gallery at 10 Oaks. Hi everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Honestly, settle down. Hello! Welcome! Thank you all for coming! We have an amazing poet, Jennifer Richter, here from Corvallis to do a reading. I have a quick announcement for an extra opportunity for us all to be back here again later this month. Thursday, October 17th, we are having our Paintings to Poems program. Yes, which for those unfamiliar, we let the poets loose in the art gallery. We invite them to pick a piece of art that particularly inspires you, and then we give you 45 minutes to write something, and then we force you to read it.
What if someone cheats and comes in early and looks at the paintings and does their poem?
Bob, if you would like to come in early and look at the paintings and write a poem prior to attending,
Yes.
you may.
Oh.
Or anyone else who happens to want to do the same thing. But yes, that's fine too. So that'll be Thursday, October 17th at 6 p.m. here at the gallery. And it's a lot of fun. It's also really amazing. The artists that have had poems written about their work love to see how others have interpreted it. We get copies of all the poems that are written, and we post them up next to the painting, and then when that painting sells, the poem goes with it. So it's just a really fun time. Also, I get kind of a head rush being a taskmaster with the time. So thank you for facilitating my power trip. On that note, we will welcome Jennifer. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll just jump in and get started.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Courtney's gone. Thank you, Courtney, for inviting me to be here. I think we may have been emailing for about 18 months to set this up. So finally, here I am. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for offering this gorgeous space that I'm sorry I haven't been in before, but I look forward to coming back to. And thank you all for being here. I look forward to hearing your poems in a little bit. So let's see. So I would like to read a poem from my editor, John Tribble. He was a prince of a man who died much too early yesterday, suddenly. And he truly is the reason that I get to do this writing life that I love. He, with my first book manuscript, he chose it out of a pile of hundreds and passed it along to a judge who picked it as the contest winner. For my second book, he picked it. It was the editor's selection for the press, and truly, he's it. I have so much gratitude for him and love, and in fact, yeah, it sort of says it all. What I wrote to him in the acknowledgments of my second book is, I'm tremendously grateful to John Tribble, whose belief in my work sounds like one long resonant yes. And that's it. Everyone should be that lucky to feel that kind of support out in the world. So this first poem is for him. I'm going to read a couple from this first book called Threshold. I'll tell you a little backstory about the poem. So I grew up in Chicago. My parents very recently moved out of the house they lived in for 46 years that I grew up in. One of the best gifts they gave me was one time they flew out and brought this giant box of paintings and drawings and poems that I had written as a kid. and it continues to be one of the best presents I've ever gotten. Much of it I remembered, but much of it I didn't. And for some reason in this box, as I was sort of sifting through it, I found a love note from a boy in elementary school. And I was so touched by this that a line from that love note makes its way into this poem. So this is a poem for our son. The you in the poem is Luke, our son. And the poem is called, You Were Born to Be Mine, See? Why Even Fight It? I'm good at making hearts. 7 years ago inside me, I made yours. Bedtime tonight, you pull me close and whisper, you ask me how to spell admirer. You don't ask why I wipe my eyes, or why your father's out again, or why each night we think our voices rising down the hall don't keep you up. A boy your age once hid this in my desk. Now I'm positive I love you. The first time you wrote love, you handed it to me. But this new word in your careful printing, I know I'll never see. Once I held you in my lap and showed you how to cut a heart. You tried and tried. Yours looked like a little mouth, surprised. You held mine in your hands. Yes, I said, you can have it. And here's a poem for our daughter. To be fair, of course, the kids are interested in fairness. This is, I'm feeling very nostalgic because we just dropped our daughter off for her freshman year at U of O in Eugene. Our son already goes there, so we have for, 9 days now been empty nesters, which is a strange kind of untethered existence that I haven't gotten used to yet. But this one's for Chloe, and it begins with her voice. It's called Brought to Life. Did you know people sometimes use their tongues to kiss? She asks. It's bedtime. She's lying on her back like Snow White you just read about, her still lips red and waiting for the prince. When you're not shocked, the second you grin, that's true, your daughter wants to try it. She's almost 8. You've seen the boys at recess, pick her first. The one who you said yes to years ago made your name into a spell. Each night you lie beneath him in the dark, he whispers it. The part your daughter loves, when you said yes, he took you to another land. On the famous church's ceiling, God looking down his outstretched arm, his finger reaching through the air. You'd barely touched each other then. Your daughter puckers up and points her tongue at you. In the painting, Adam waits. He's there, though really his life hasn't started yet. This is how she'll feel one day. You're leaning into her. You'll try to show your daughter how to love. One day she'll leave in search of someone else to care for her. In the deep woods, then, your voice will be a tiny call that's lost. She'll question every mirror until one answers, you. Okay, so let me move on to my second book here. This poem, anybody know the poet Mary Shebist, who teaches at Reed? Beautiful poet, fantastic human being. This poem is for her. She wrote a poem called Girls Overheard Assembling a Puzzle. So I sort of stole that a little bit. And mine is called Girls Overheard While Eating Gourmet Jelly Beans. Pina coladas to die for. This one tastes like honey. Honey soap. Ew, licorice, my mom loves those. Some Easter bunny she is. every year the same faded eggs in our yard? At least yours didn't make you go to church. Pass that basket. Stick out your tongue. Your breath's like bubble bath. Ooh, try passion fruit. They taste like lip gloss but look like blood, little beads of it. Creepy. Miss Willis said ovum 12 times in Friday's class. I heard she lives alone. This tastes like, that's just sad. Mango, definitely mango. Alone with all her weird tan human body models, probably. Coconut, like some mini chicken came and laid them. Don't try this kind unless you have a taste for apple candles. Licorice doesn't get good, but it gets better. My mom hangs on now when she hugs as if I'm going away for good. I wish. Grape is like communion juice. You know that boulder rolled away story? If they put me, pink lemonade, all those stands we had, all those boys on bikes, you know that if they shut me in some cave alone, I'd sure as hell find my way out too. Amen to that, sister. Cookie dough? Oh my God, take me now. Whoa, listen, amen's got men in it. So you can tell, so my first book is called Threshold, and ever since writing that, I've been very interested in kind of liminal spaces, kind of gray areas, middle ground. I continue to be, I taught a class last year on obsession, so this is clearly one of mine, these kind of thin lines. One gray area I'm very interested in is the sometimes thin line between childhood and adulthood. I think our kids also, kind of without warning, are sort of tipping one way or the other on that axis all the time. The kind of early phone calls home from our daughter in college. She seems quite young, and yet in other ways, she's got this. She's happily launched. This is a poem. I've done some work in a youth correctional facility in Albany, teaching the girls who live there. And this is a poem that arises out of that experience. And I thought of it because they too are really not sure, kind of tipping back and forth between child and adult at any moment. This is called Still Life, Youth Correctional Facility for Girls. The windows mirror them, unyielding, hardwired for toughness, each a different glimpse of the outside. Diagonal light snags their busted slinky stretched along the 10-foot fence background. Barbed shadows loop the kid-proofed common room. Its caged clock stuck at time for group. All in orange, they're spilled from the same basket. Some are cut, though the blade stays beyond the frame. Predictably dark green, tall, a guard's inanimate behind them. This scene teaches middle ground. Share the molded plastic sofa. Don't sprawl across it like cascading grapes. The handmade sign, bend like a willow, is a fallen, crinkled leaf. Still, this is better than what they left. Too much movement, just out of sight. The one sitting stiff as a pitcher feels even now his fingers squeezing tight around her arm. In the shady corner, a peach clinging to her leaves. Maybe you know the phrase no acute distress. It took me becoming chronically ill for years to learn it. So I'll tell you now so you don't have to go through that. It's a kind of shorthand that doctors often they write NAD in charts. meaning, there's something here, but it's not urgent, right? And I had the experience, which is a very strange one, of reading my own chart notes some years later and reading how I was described by doctors and nurses and in third person. So the title comes from that term, and the book considers the thin line between health and illness also, as well as I'm hoping to consider the thin line between comedy and tragedy. I think, I wrote Threshold and I thought, okay, I'm done with that subject. Whew. And no, no, I had another book to write, and but this book has a different perspective. This has a little bit of distance on the experience, and I think that's where some of the comedy comes from. That I think deep in it I couldn't see that from a kind of step away. And comedy, I just mean as kind of like the absurd that you find yourself in these kind of situations. There's a poet called Max Richter, and he passed away very young from cancer a few years ago. And there's a quote of his that I like that I'm going to share with you. He says, "Anything that inspires fear or sadness has a dimension of humor built into it. I don't think you can ever introduce humor into fear or introduce humor into sadness. All you do is illuminate what was always there." So a number of the poems that are tackling chronic illness in this book are using the framework of a classic joke form. And the joke poems are all titled with language that I pulled from my own chart notes. So the title poem of this book is called Pleasant, Healthy-Appearing Adult White Female in No Acute Distress. "Fancy seeing you here," my surgeon exclaims. His nurses roll their eyes above their masks. He drags a stool over, checks my line, winks, "Hi, Smiley." My chart notes say cooperative. "Come here often?" 3 procedures, 2 years, 1 doctor. His findings are significant. Put me under and I'll laugh at anything. What's a girl like you doing in a place like this? He's warming up. He's counting down. It only takes till 8. Heavy velvet curtains rushing shut. House lights down. His whisper from the wings, "We've got to stop meeting like this." Did you hear the one about the woman whose illness made her confuse happiness and sadness? When her doctor said, "How are you?" she grinned, "Never better." Then she wailed, "Never better." Today's lack of response suggests that the patient is not a significant placebo responder. You've watched women, desperate as you, take him in the bathroom, open-mouthed, moaning, so sick of being let down that they'll insist with him they've never felt better. Though he's a tease, all talk, no action, every morning women wake with his name on their lips. You're waiting for the one. He's out there, the ads of grins and picnics promise. Now your TV announces, "I've got good news and bad news." The bad news is he'll come with baggage, warnings, increased risks, possible sudden losses. And the good news? Live alone this long and you talk back. The good news is he'll definitely mess with your head. The heart of this book, the middle section, is a poem in 10 parts, 10 numbered sections called 18 Seconds. Each of the sections is speaking directly to a doctor. And the epigraph from the New York Times that begins the series says, patients on average have 18 seconds to talk to a doctor before they are interrupted. And that kind of urgency, I think, in these poems, I think fuels a lot of the book. So I'll just read a few of these. This is 18 seconds. Number 2. I guess there is some family history. My father in the waiting room looked down, nodded. I filled depression's circle black. I'd say I'm happiest when heading here. This is where I go in my free time. Now I'm ready for plan B. Happiness is something new to Google. Those who claim it's a warm puppy also tell me that I'll grow from this, except my dad's still driving me around and I still take a child's dose. 7. My therapist tried hypnotizing me. Turns out I'm good at it, but nothing changed. Turns out with no results I tend to come back anyway, though that behavior is not rewarded. 10, 9, 8. How many weeks until my next procedure? I'm no mind reader. I've had to choose between 2 dooms. Accept the risk or call it good like this. No more scenarios. I'm sick and tired. At night, we use white noise machines like hers. 8. In most ways, I'm like no one else. Except when I'm the caption for that overused cartoon, I'm sorry, honey, not tonight. The woman with an ice bag on her head, a single squiggle on the husband's brow. I mostly dress up and undress for you. Tell me, are you seeing other patients just like me on a regular basis? What do we have in common? I'm desperate to be a type, labeled, buttoned down, nailed. 10. I'm better since last time. I'm better since I don't need naps as much. Even though I don't need naps as much, I still have trouble sleeping. Trouble sleeping is still better than having trouble waking. Even though I calm my kids and say I understand, there's hardly anything I understand. I understand their waking in the dark. Their dark is sometimes and is always me. I'm fine if you mean satisfactory. So here's another, this is a poem that I thought of, that I couldn't have written some years earlier. This poem took some space. Something that getting some years away allowed me to see was the abundance of small acts of kindness and joy that in fact were in all those years, but that while in it, it was hard to see those little glimmers. And this is a poem that I wrote about one of those little moments, surprising little moments of light. It refers to a hospital roommate. It's called Inpatient. All the other nurses flipped the switch to get us up. Fluorescence flared like pain. 5:30 a.m. They buzzed our beds. The motor slowly made me sit. I was by the door, so I was always first. They pulled my blankets off, pumped the cuff around my arm, checked my pulse where I wasn't attached to a bag. The most they'd say. They'd swing the trays across our laps, then leave. We'd wait an hour like that for a hallway voice to come and show its face. But this nurse was a sub. I saw her only once. You'd left by then. They stripped your sheets. My vitals took a dive. That morning while I slept, she found my hand in the dark and got the numbers for my chart. I dreamed I waved. I dreamed we drove away on mattresses. She tucked my hand back in. The little sconce that she turned on made a V of amber glow. Honey, she said. Then I woke up crying. Crying. I was that happy. So some of the poems in both of my books are set in Vietnam. It's a place that I've been to twice now, a place that I love. I think it occurred to me to go first because two of the poets I studied with most closely are both Vietnam vets, and urged me to go, and then I fell in love with it. I think that it didn't occur to me while I was writing them, but I'm not surprised, I guess, that that some of the poems pair illness with my experience in Vietnam. And again, I didn't sort of set out to do that, but I do think that the experience of chronic illness for me did feel like a kind of foreign country I was trying to navigate. It felt really kind of new each day, like I was kind of trying to find my way through it. So this poem is set in Ho Chi Minh City, and I'll just set it up a little bit. So there's a man there who has a brilliant business idea, which is he sits outside of a temple on a little stool, and he has this giant kind of basket box looking thing crammed with birds. I mean, hundreds of live birds are in there. So many that there are like wings sticking out of the box, and it's this racket going on in this box like you can't imagine. So you can't. It's impossible to walk past and not look at it. And so we figured out eventually that what's happening here is his business plan is if you come up and you give him some small amount of money. In return, he'll reach into the box, pull out a bird, hand it to you. You make a wish on the bird and you let it go. So it's this beautiful win-win thing, right? The bird gets freed, you feel lighter. It's all, right, in theory, it's lovely. But here's what happened instead. It's called Leaving Thienhau Temple. To load the bird with trouble, watch it fly away for good. I've paid a man for one brown sparrow pecking at its basket trap. Dozens in there. If they all flapped at once, it might lift off. Imagine that relief. Pink tissue paper flags curl toward the sky. I prayed for years, but now I'm winging it. The man's cupped hand is feathered, beaked, alive. The other one won't work. On Nguyen Tri Street, we make a desperate little trinity. The squirming bird bursts out, takes one quick spin above the tiled roof, then loops right back into the crowded cage. Oh. My pain smirks. See? It's singing now. You're nothing without me. And I'll read one more from Threshold. This is a poem set in Hanoi. When my husband and I were there, we walked everywhere, but everybody else was on a bicycle, on a bike. And, you know, it was sort of taking your life in your own hands to cross the street because it's just, you know, you have to just sort of, you know, step off the curb and go for it and hope this is going to all go fine because there's no, you know, it's just everywhere. No, there's no, like, yeah, no organization to any of this. So there's this sea of bikes everywhere. And because it's Vietnam, the bikes are hammered. The bikes are falling apart as they're riding them. And so I wanted to write a poem about this man who was there to do something about that. This poem is called Prayer for the Hanoi Man Who Waits for Breakdowns on His Block. One like him on every block, a man who crouches by his tray of parts, gears, plugs, bolts, sprockets, cogs, his greasy jewels displayed on slick black oil. But this is for the man on Hung Bai Street, the block before the lake, the man who looked away when I walked past, who dropped his eyes to hide the war of scars his body is. Oh God, so much to fix. Give him once a day at least a woman at his feet. Give him what it takes to fix her limping bike. Forgive us all. Make his next world one that doesn't always fall apart around him.
Yeah.
This is the last poem in No Acute Distress. And it's called No Joke. Saigon chickens cross the road to get to what's left of the rice. From their perch in an abandoned shack, they hustle, clucking to the neighbor bent before a small red altar at her door. She snips the faded mums, dusts the photographs, mounds warm rice in bowls, then shares the rest. Ancestors sit grinning in their frames. The path they walk with her, not linear, but looped. Every moment holds the other side. It's different, I know. Her history of pain and mine, the cloud of ghosts who share our homes, what we mean by being saved. I know, too, we have our families to thank for where we are. She sees me hesitate and laughs, shooing me to say, just keep going, you'll be fine. Health feels like stepping off this curb, wild sea of motor scooters parting. I love it here. Chrome rushes by in sparkling waves. At times, I thought I might not make it back. Even the quality of light is new. I've come so far. And I'd like to finish with one more for our daughter, Chloe. Thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to you being right here in a second. This is called My Daughter Brings Home Bones. My daughter brings home bones and piles them on the driveway. Femur, rib, jawbone with a few flat teeth attached, dozens of thin arced parts. This is for me, 40 today. My birthday sent her to the woods and back. Chloe leans in on her knees, arranges the bones along a concrete seam that leads out to the street. In this next decade, she'll go. Head off like today, take into her arms all she's curious about. Her line of bones makes an arrow. Sun lights them like a sign. She'll go, undeniable as these bones, baffling as what animal they'd make. She's on all fours, the way I labored, some wild thing. She lays out arms and legs. The bones in line make a spine, my height. On the driveway lies my body when it held her inside out. The way she came,
We're ready! Okay, let's get on with the open mic. I don't have my list. Dave, I think you were first on it.
It's called Veterans Assembly. The old soldier sits quietly, hands steadying on his walker. He once jumped from a landing craft assaulting Normandy Beach. He listens to the speeches and songs that honor him and his brother and wonders if this will be his last Veterans Day Assembly. Finally, the mic is passed to him. He fumbles it with unsteady hands that used to hold a sniper's rifle. Haltingly, he commands a crowd of 500 middle school students. He speaks of patriotism, and standing during the anthem, he talks of honoring the flag and the privilege of living free. He mentions the vileness of Hitler and the Nazi regime, the evil he fought so many years ago. He talks about the caravan of people headed for the U.S. border and the wretched conditions they face every day. He says that soldiers are being sent to meet them, and he doesn't understand why they can't put down their weapons and welcome these people with open arms. He passes the mic during thunderous applause and retires the field, a hero once again.
Oh, yeah.
So the current working title of this poem is, by the end of this poem, you will see Jesus, and it's a tribute to my grandparents. He bends his head to his lathe, a master craftsman extracting beauty from formless lumps of wood. Turning, he smiles at me and places his poetry in my hands, folding my fingers around his chisel pen. He wraps his giant hands around mine and guides me to beauty. Her gnarled, arthritic fingers pull the skeleton husband from his bed. Urine-soaked sheets fill the room with ammonia, but she kisses his forehead, and with the strength that comes from somewhere else, her slight frame lifts him into the bathtub every day for 2 years, treasuring the end of his life. Each day, with a smile on her face and a lilt in her voice, she is called Grandma by hundreds of children and has fed thousands with only the miracle of hard work. She lives in simplicity, feeding stomach and soul at the same time. Born too early to have learned to play Elton John by ear, she scans the notes on the new sheet music, practicing Crocodile Rock. So the grandson, who adoringly sings hymns with her, will have the chance to sing along to his music. The timing is awkward, but she keeps at it, nimble fingers building a bridge across the generation gap. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Bonnie?
This is called Kingsley and Daisy. Kingsley is a black lab that lives next door. He's a friendly fellow, never a bore. When I get close to the dividing fence, he comes running and barking as if in defense. And then when I talk to him, he settles right down. He offers a low growl, meaning a smile, not a frown. Then came the day a new dog named Daisy came to his yard and drove Kingsley crazy. A golden lab to keep Kingsley company and maybe someday join him as a family. Kingsley wasn't too sure of this intruder, but thought maybe she might be a good brooder. He ran around the yard, front and back, yapping and barking and just yakety yak. He was trying to get her to come and play, but she wasn't yet sure if she wanted to stay. It took a few days for the newness to wear thin, and then Daisy ran with him, and she wore a cute grin. They both came to the fence to talk with me. They're a cute couple, good neighbors they'll be. It'll be fun to see when they start a family, whether the pups look like Daisy or Kingsley, striped, checkered, spotted, black or gold. They'll be darling puppies, delightful to hold. Labrador puppies are the best, I'm told. It's just too bad they always get sold.
Thank you, Bonnie. You first.
Hang on to me.
Bruce?
Okay, so somebody already broke the ice with the religious realm, so I won't feel so bad introducing this one. Previously in the garden, there he stood, naked, leaning into the cool iron curls of an ancient gate, relishing divine flavor, spitting grape seeds. He could feel a soft breeze rustling leaves in the nearby fig tree, a breeze with surprising perfume which lingered in the air. His thoughts focused on deciphering this curiously familiar scent, and he recognized apple blossoms. Their taunting aroma grew more pronounced, climbing over his lips, flowing into his breath. He could hear soft rhythmic hissing. An unseen movement brushed up along his thigh. And to accompany that, another piece, this one's later in the garden. She's laid back, wrapped in the fragrant grasp of warm meadow grass, reflecting on her animal friendships in the garden. Things still seem awkward with a few of them, like the bear and the goose, and she nearly stepped on that poor serpent again. After hissing loudly, he calmed a bit, vowing to help her get around more safely, find softer fig leaves, and reach the ripest fruit.
Thank you, Bruce. So we have Mike and then Mike. Mike, that's it. Mike on this side of the room, Mike on that side of the room.
Nothing like stereo Mike.
I mean,
Well, this is my ode to autumn, which is my favorite season of the year. Although when summer was here, that was my favorite season. So every season's my favorite season. So anyway, this is called As It Should Be. Gone are the buds of summer's bloom. Yellow leaves dot thinning plume. Autumn colors portend winter's gloom, and all is as it should be. Winter's sleep beckons the leaves. Morning's dewdrops soon will freeze. Summer's warmth will cease, and all is as it should be. Just as sure as the ice will form, the dog's thick fur will keep him warm. A fire in the stove becomes the norm, and all is as it should be. One can lament the coming of the cold, hibernate, put life on hold. Just wait for spring, I'm told, and all will be as it should be. But I welcome winter with open arms. Find enchantment in its icy charms. Embrace the beauty, ignore the harms, and all is as it should be.
thank you, Mike. What? Oh.
So we had a very good, very wonderful, thanks to Bruce, in fact, Poetry While You Wait, which is a fundraiser for the library. Yeah. And 2 months ago, Bruce wrote, a woman came in who was a partner of the ransoms where we set up, and she asked for a poem, and Bruce wrote her a poem, and emailed it to her. This last month, then we get not only a check for the library, which is really wonderful, but each of us got a bottle of wine as well. So it was good.
That was great.
Yeah. And so here's $180
Oh my goodness.
for that. So, and really great that it's allowing this to continue and stuff. It's great. Mike, my favorite time of year is autumn also. I do a lot of haiku and also tanka. So here's a series of autumn morning rainstorm. Wake in the darkness, pounding rain, hear every drop, heavy warm blankets. Stove embers flicker in mounds of soft gray ash, the smell of cold tea. Dawn gray sky darkens, small streams flow to growing lakes. Sparrows take a bath. Wind pushing raindrops, window wrinkled with rivers, hot cup between my hands. And a tanka, which is basically 5-7-5-7-7 syllables. It's actually older than the haiku method. Walking in autumn's light. Clouds sliding over roofs, moon looking through tree branches. Sweet ash smell of smoke, morning walk in autumn's light. Our wet shoes covered with grass. Thank you. That's the second time I've done that. And you saved me each time. You saved me each time.
So I have read some very long pieces here. This is a really long piece, and I'm not going to read all of it. It'll happen over the next couple of months. It's a prologue in 5 acts. So you'll get about the first third of it. 5 or 6 minutes, okay? So my daughter said I need to give a trigger warning for this. If you don't like meat or sex, this probably is not for you. This is called The Henchmen. Fog rises off the creek, silts into a muddy blue sky. A ball of spit rings in the day, a squint, and I let my eyes wander past the field to the far line of oaks, up the rise and back to the hollow. Fickle stuff, distance. Right here. Why not just be where I am? Mud on my boots, the scent of a farm. The season and the light, the breeze off the coast range. What's Sunday have on Tuesday? Who needs bells and brimstone? Worship doesn't give a damn about the calendar. Grace comes and goes. I spent 3 days last week working to untie a knot in an old piece of rope. When I gave up and pulled out my knife, I still wasn't sure what was right, the 3 days of effort or making the cut. Some stuff defies explanation. The aftermath is what people notice. Scuff marks in the dirt, the leftovers from a night. Marla's still with me. The shine between her legs, the taste of her when I lick my mustache, the flicker of time away from time. 1. People know what I do. There's no need to send up a flag, rattle the chains. I'm visible from outer space, just like the Great Wall. Yellow pants and yellow jacket, my duck suit, though I've never seen a duck that color except in cartoons. I bought the jacket without the hood, so there's not even a bill to suggest I might be related to waterfowl. Cartoons? Hell, I could wear paisley, blow bubbles. People are going to take me seriously. They might not ask my thoughts on Hamlet or Lear, but they'll tell me about the weather. They'll let me talk about the weather. Blow, wind. They don't know what I think. They only know what I do. Every man needs a job. The lucky one gets to choose his tools. Rifle behind the seat, ammo in the glove box, his knives, the slaughter wagon with a swinging arm winch. If I built myself an A-frame and threw the cable over the top, I could raise the slaughter wagon right off the ground. Right off the ground. Well, that might not seem useful. A man wants to quantify now and then. Sometimes in bright red letters. Cully Minor, mobile slaughtering, custom cutting, mammals only, or the odd duck. Varmints killed for free every blue moon. I'm the one they call. Whether the animal's hiding in the shade of an oak tree, eating mama's dahlias, grazing near the road, or down in the creek bottom makes no difference. Mrs. Dalloway wants pork for dinner. Pork she'll have. The bacon will have to wait, everyone knows that. Some things take time. A cleaver, smoke, process. Sometimes a trophy hunter doesn't want anything more than the head or the antlers. I'm not going to let good meat go to waste just because some asshole needs a horn to remind him what hard is. People need protein in their diet. Sheriff Gordy keeps a list. The hides go to Father Oliver. The big priest loves his leather, his gloves and his belts, his buckskin shirt, the shroud he's stitching for Sister Kate. I butcher cattle and pigs, elk and deer, that odd duck, lambs, lots of lambs, almost always at the cute stage. Even if people have a hard time killing an animal that bleats, they love their lamb. Butterfly leg, shoulder chops, ribs, barbecued with a good dry rub. Pan frying is a damn sin if you ask me. Pasture to plate, backstrap, steaks, liver medallions, hamburger, rolls of summer sausage the size of a baseball bat, patties wrapped up tight just like Christmas. I stamp the date, sign my name. I'll even pack the meat away in your freezer. Pork chops to the right, beef front and center, lamb near the frozen berries, because pie and lamb make January taste like summer. 2. I put my faith in surprise, I told Marla last night. I put my fingers on her cheek, kissed her, pleased with the way I wrapped my tongue around such a big idea, brought poetry into the bedroom, rhythm before rhythm. Thought that might get her bucking. I should have known better. Stuff like that. Whoop, thank you.
I know.
Okay.
Yay! Thank you for the important service you have provided. Lucy?
I brought a poem that I wrote several years ago, and I decided to get it out and see if I could make it better, kind of fiddled around with it, about my parents. And it's called Driving Lessons. My mother taught my father how to drive. She would say this proudly, thinking it was the only thing she had to teach him. Her father taught her how to shift gears on a Model T. She learned sitting at attention in the driver's seat, careful to make as smooth a glide as she could down Woodlawn Avenue. Granddad sat next to her. "Easy now, easy. I believe you've got it," he'd say, and she would hold her head high. When she taught my father, he was an engineering student with a head full of theory about gears, principles of acceleration, laws of motion, who found himself on a sunny day in the driver's seat next to a pretty girl in a green sundress, hand on a rattling gear shift, foot poised over a clutch, ready to put theory into practice. When the car jolted and jerked forward, my mother put her hand on the dash to steady herself. "Whoopsie," she'd say. "Try it again. Easy now, easy." Until this shy young man, whose family couldn't afford a car during the Depression, drove smoothly away, marveling at the beauty of objects in motion.
Thank you. Michael?
How y'all doing up in here?
Good.
All right. This poem was written by me and is entitled Rainbow at Night. There's a moment upon nightfall when there was no rain and there was no bow, but there was a rainbow at night. Before the moon, luminescent through moving clouds, was a round assortment of colors, rays from a lesser light, yet chiefest among the glories of night. This next piece is untitled, but it's written about the special lady I have not yet met. Wooden floors with the creak indicate business of the feet, and so he paced back and forth, but now I pace my life discreet. Some days a stumble, some days a frown. If only her presence would turn his face upside down. When those days are found, in joy they meet, our dwelling may result in ultrasound. With open arms, new life we greet.
Is October 18th this month. So if you're by the Ransom Distillery and Tasting Room, come say hi to our poet. I forgot to mention, for those of you, we have two writing programs coming up at the library this month. The first one is coming up on October 13th, which is a Sunday at 2 p.m. at the library. And we have a Maggie Stuckey, who is an author of over 40 published books, mostly nonfiction. But she is having a special presentation about behind the story, life as a real writer, because you're all real writers, just so you know. But that is her job. So it's a kind of look behind the curtain about what's it like to be someone who is a full-time writer, going from the kernel of an idea to published books on the shelf. So that is on Sunday the 13th. And then it's October, which means next month is November, which is National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo, in which we challenge you to write a novel in the month of November. So to get ready for that, we'll have Kendi Pearson, another local writer, will be giving a 3-hour intensive workshop on how to NaNoWriMo. Everything from story arcs to character developments, and the fact that you have to do it all in the month of November. So it'll be very valuable information. So Sunday the 13th, Saturday the 26th, both at 2, both at the library. Writers welcome, everyone's welcome, but especially writers. And then we'll also see you back here on October 17th for Paintings to Poems, and November 7th, thank you, Nancy, is our next poetry night. And our reader will be, actually we have not seen him since our days at the Velvet Monkey. John Sibley Williams will be back doing a reading. Here, same bat time, same bat channel. My dad made me watch all the old Adam S. Batman movies. But we'll be here next month for poetry night. Please thank Jennifer. Please buy her books. Feel free to enjoy the gallery. Thank you all so much for coming.
You have to just sort of, step off the curb and go for it and hope this is going to all go fine, because there's no, it's just everywhere. No, there's no,